the air you're breathing is toxic. How does that affect you?
This is Sugar Ray. He lived here in Queensbridge for 20 years. It's the largest housing complex in the nation and home to 7,000 low-income, mostly Black and brown folks. Directly across from it is the biggest peaker power plant in the state at the Ravenswood Generating Station. Peakers, for short, produce the most toxic emissions out of all types of power plants.
And even just like playing basketball, seeing them, seeing smoke constantly coming from you, like, what is that?
Current CEO of the Variety Boys and Girls Club of Queens, Costa Constantinidis, served as city council member for Western Queens for the previous 7 years.
I was chair of the Environmental Protection Committee and a member of that committee for more than a decade. Peaker plants are those at peak times, right? When it's really cold and everyone turns on their boilers and their heaters and all that, and it stresses our grid. Or in the summer when it's really, really hot outside and everyone's going for that air conditioner that clicks on these peaker plants. And it releases PM 2.5, nitrous oxide, sulfur oxide, all the stuff that gets in your lungs that causes asthma.
Communities close to these peakers, like Queensbridge, are often dubbed Asthma Alley because of the disproportionately high rates of asthma. Peakers are also often correlated with cardiovascular disease and even neurological problems.
Less oxygen, right, or toxic oxygen, toxic air, you breathing that in, it affects your brain.
The communities near these plants usually have already been exposed to years of contaminants, like mold, lead, and car pollution, and have inadequate access to healthcare. The South Bronx is another neighborhood impacted by peakers, where the asthma emergency room rate among children is nearly triple the citywide rate. Here at Brook Park, local advocacy group South Bronx Unite hosts an event to raise awareness about issues in the community, health being one of them.
When I say, tell me what community looks like.
This is Arif Ullah, Executive Director at South Bronx Unite.
Tell me what community looks like.
This is what community looks like.
Tell me.
Peak power plants are a problem everywhere, of course, and we share solidarity with Ravenswood. And here we have 4 peak power plants here in the Mott Haven-Port Morris section of the South Bronx. One of the reasons why we have such a high rate of asthma in our community is because of infrastructure like peak power plants.
If we put you on the mic right now, we ask who here knows someone who has asthma, or do they have asthma themselves? Most of the people will raise their hands.
Founding member of South Bronx Unite, Michael Johnson, has been a longtime community activist advocating for cleaner air.
Our children deserve fresh air like any other community. It's not equitable, it's not equal, all things aren't equal. And that's why we feel what's happened here is environmental racism.
We need to not be afraid to say that this is racism, right? This is part of racism, systemic racism. Like, we don't care about those people.
The legacy of Robert Moses is what we're dealing with here, right? Like, everything west of 21st Street was redlined.
Meaning it was designated as an area where banks would not lend due to racial discrimination.
And so where did they place these power plants? Where they placed them west of 21st Street, where it was redlined, where they also built public housing. So you have them next to Queensbridge, which is the largest public housing development in the country, is across the street from the Ravenswood generating plant.
And the sad irony is, while Queensbridge essentially hosts this power plant, the houses there frequently have power shortages themselves.
Yeah, sometimes when it's people, like whole apartment lines, like the whole thing will have no heat, or the whole building will have no heat.
I'm Seth Mullendor. I'm Vice President of Clean Energy Group. We are a national nonprofit organization. We focus on enabling a more equitable transition to the clean energy future. So we advocate for the retirement of fossil fuel peakers in New York City and the replacement of that capacity with clean resources.
This would require replacing the baseload power with other forms of energy creation.
How do we replace the baseload in the long term? We need to build our own renewable energy sources here in the city of New York. We need to retrofit our buildings to use less power. But then on top of that, really looking for renewable energy sources maybe outside of the city that can plug into Zone J, which is the New York City area.
A lot of folks are looking, particularly for those kind of short duration, we need energy over a few hours that peakers often provide. battery storage systems are a real asset that can provide that need and can be built in a lot of places in the city.
Asthma Alley is a really alarming, disturbing term, and it's not a term by which we want to be known.
This is still an issue, right? This is still a major issue.
While the state recently passed legislation setting the goal of retiring all peakers by May 2023, for now, communities like the South Bronx and Queensbridge will keep breathing, and that breath comes at a dangerous cost.